Welcome to the Pennsylvania State Archives new Records Coordinator Training, Inventorying Record Schedule Changes, and File Plans. This training is intended to assist agency record coordinators and alternates who have been appointed as the agency representative regarding records management functions. This module will cover inventorying agency records, making changes to agency record schedules, and creating file plans to help you better manage your agency's records. For more assistance, visit the Pennsylvania State Archives Records Management page or contact us using the information on this slide. In this training, we will discuss three things. First, how to inventory records in an office. Second, how to make changes to your agency's record schedule. And third, how to create a file plan for an office and keep it up to date. These are three interrelated processes that will ensure your agency's records are all accounted for and being retained for the appropriate amount of time. By the end of this training, our goal is that an agency records coordinator or other staff member should be able to conduct a survey of all paper and electronic records in an office and make sure that everything in that office is accurately listed on the general or agency record schedule. If there are any discrepancies between how records are currently being retained and disposed and with the record schedule, they'll be able to make the necessary changes so the schedule and current record keeping matches. And then finally, they'll be able to create a file plan that office staff can use going forward so there is no confusion about where records should be kept, for how long, and how to dispose of them when their retention time ends. Depending on how records are currently being managed in your agency, you may need to use all of these things, and in other cases only some will be needed. Each of these is a tool that we use to keep our records managed well and compliant with all records policies and management directives. Let's start with conducting an inventory of our office records. The records inventory is a way for office staff to collect basic information about records in their custody and their current use. Inventorying records is useful for offices that do not have file plans and are not familiar with the general or agency-specific record schedules. Record inventories are also useful when staff are reviewing records that they are not familiar with, such as inactive records that have been in storage for a while. An inventory will help staff and agency record coordinators determine what records are actually on hand and how they are being used so that staff can ensure they're following retention and disposal policies correctly. A records inventory will also help staff and record coordinators draft accurate file plans and can be a quick procedure that any staff member can complete if an inventory of records stored in a single area is needed immediately, such as when a disaster event, office move, or other unusual event occurs. The Pennsylvania State Archives has a sample inventory form on its website for agency use. Here's a blank copy of that form on the screen. One inventory form should be filled out for each type of records in an office. For example, if an office contains travel receipts, pay stubs, annual budget reports, and P-card files, 4 separate inventory forms should be filled out. Let's take a minute and go through each section on the inventory form and how to fill it out. Agency name. Enter the name of the agency, commission, or board that the record currently belongs to. This is especially important with records that are jointly created by multiple agencies or for records belonging to programs that have recently moved between different agencies. Bureau, division, or office. Enter the full name of the business area that the records currently belong to. This may also include the name of regional offices. There should only be one business unit per inventory form. Record series title. Enter the name staff in the office call this record. If the record's official name from the agency or general schedule is known, include that. If records are inactive or obsolete and staff are not familiar with the records, you may need to review record schedules to determine what the name of the record is. This could also be a sign that the record is currently unscheduled and that it should be added to your agency record schedule. Date range. Inspect the records and determine when the records were created. Be sure to verify that any dates written on container labels or electronic timestamps accurately tell you when records were actually created. In some cases, dates on records may be misleading or indicate when a record was last modified and not when it was actually created. This is also a great way to identify records that are past their assigned retention period and could be disposed. Record series description. Describe the nature, purpose, and use of these records. A description can include different types of documents found in the record, such as reports, correspondence, or spreadsheets. Having a records description will help confirm what a record's official title and retention is, even if the office uses a different name than the official one in a record schedule. Arrangement. Enter how the records are currently arranged or organized. Typical arrangements include alphabetical, numerical, chronological, or alphanumeric. If records are unarranged or arranged by another method, that should be specified in the Other option in this section. Retention. Enter the record's official retention time and citation in the general or agency record schedule if it is known. Also enter any trigger points that indicate when retention begins, such as after a case is closed or after an employee retires. There are options to mark whether a record has permanent retention or whether it has historical value and should be reviewed by the state archives at the end of its retention period. If a record is not included on the general or agency record schedule, it should be indicated here so that agency record coordinators can add them to the appropriate schedule. Location. Enter the physical location where the records are kept. Include room numbers and areas of storerooms, offices, or work areas as appropriate. For electronic records, enter the name of the shared drive, cloud storage area, or specific computer where these files are stored. Records custodian. Enter the name of the staff person or persons responsible for the custody of these records. This may include a staff person who has physical access to the storage area, a person with the most knowledge about the records and their use, or a person who's in charge of the creation, retention, and disposal of these records. Format. Enter the format of the records in this particular location. It could be paper, it could be electronic, it could be something else. Do not mark the additional format types for records copies that are stored in other locations because that would be included on another agency inventory form. Quantity. Enter the total quantity of records currently in this storage area in cubic feet or file size. 1 cubic foot is equivalent to roughly the size of a banker's box. If appropriate, record the specific number of items, such as reels of microfilm or blueprints. Annual accumulation. Similar to the quantity section, enter the estimated annual accumulation of records that are being added to this record storage area. If records are inactive and no additional records are being created, you can enter 0. Frequency of use. Enter how frequently staff are accessing these records on a daily, monthly, or annual basis. Restrictions on use. Enter any known restrictions on the use of these records, such as they are restricted to agency use only or only particular staff members. Use this space to list specific types of records that contain confidential information such as personnel or client personal information, medical information, or educational records. If records custodians are unsure if records have any restrictions, contact your agency's legal counsel or other appropriate staff. Other information about records. Enter additional information in this final section to note if the records are in poor physical condition, if the records are designated as essential according to your agency's COOP plan, or if the records are designated as official records and there are duplicate copies stored somewhere else in the agency. Name of person completing this form. Enter the name of the person who completed the form so that agency record coordinators or other staff know who to contact if there are further questions about them in the future during record schedule revisions or drafting of file plans. After you've inventoried all the records in an office, you should have a good sense of what records are on hand and if they're compliant with current retention disposal procedures listed in records manuals. If any records have issues, this inventory process will help identify those and what needs to be done next. After you've completed inventorying the records in an office, in theory you should be able to find all of these records on the general and agency record schedules. However, it is likely that you will encounter things that don't line up with what's on the schedule. Records are being kept longer or shorter than official retention times. Records are being stored digitally when the schedule lists them as paper records. Records are listed on the schedule that are no longer used or created by the agency. And that's why record coordinators need to know how to make updates to their agency retention schedules. Previous trainings in this series covered the general retention schedule and agency record schedules that apply to each Commonwealth agency. These schedules are not unchanging documents. They're constantly being modified as agency record needs change. Sometimes an office starts creating a new type of record which doesn't exist on any schedule. That needs to be added to their agency record schedule. Sometimes a new policy or federal requirement requires that records need to be kept longer than before, so the agency needs to change the retention time or disposal instructions for a record listed on their schedule. Sometimes a program ends or is transferred to another agency. In those cases, you'll need to remove a record from the schedule because it's no longer your agency's responsibility. When these kinds of things happen in your agency, there are 3 ways that you can update your record schedule to keep it accurate: adding new records to your schedule, amending or editing existing records on that schedule, or deleting and removing records from the schedule. Let's look at how we make these 3 kinds of changes. Adding and amending records on your agency schedule are done through the Electronic Records Action System, or ERA. an online program that record coordinators have access to. There's a separate training for the ERA system that goes into more detail on this process. In this training, we're just going to cover the required types of information you'll need in order to add or amend a record on your schedule. The process for adding new records and amending or editing existing records is the same, so we'll cover them both together. This is a screenshot from the ERA system. All the sections with red asterisks are required fields that you will be required to enter as you fill this out. You might notice that a lot of these are similar to the types of information we included on the records inventory form earlier in this training. When you are adding a new record to your record schedule, you'll need to enter all of these fields. If you're amending an existing record from your schedule, you'll only need to enter the ones that need to be changed from what's currently listed. Agency or department code. Here's where you enter the full number and name of the agency. Organization code or SAP cost center code. Here's where you'll enter the 10-digit code unique to the bureau that the records belong to. If you're unsure what a bureau's current SAP code is, contact your agency's financial department for assistance. Bureau name. Enter the full name of the bureau that the record's action is for. Contact person and telephone. This will always be the agency records coordinator, the person who is entering this information into the system. Type of action. The ERA system will ask if this record's action is to add a new series or type of record or to amend an existing one. Record series number. Enter the 8-digit record series number for this new record. Typically, agencies will use the next available number that has not been used previously on their agency's record schedule. Record series title. Enter the name of the record series that you are adding to the schedule. Record series description. Enter the detailed description of the record series. Series descriptions should include the nature, purpose, and use of the records. A description can include different types of documents found in the records as well, such as reports, correspondence, or spreadsheets. Format. Enter the formats that the records are created and maintained in. Options include paper, microfilm, electronic, portable media such as DVDs or CDs, cartographic records, and multiple or mixed media when records exist in multiple formats. Agency retention. Enter how long, in years and months, the record must be retained by the agency. SRC retention. Enter how long, in years and months, the record must be retained at the State Record Center. SRC retention is typically for records that are inactive or seldom used but must be retained for long periods of time. Addendum. Enter if there are any special instructions that would trigger a record's retention time. Examples may include retention does not begin until case is closed, or retain records for 10 years after contract ends. This section is not mandatory but may be required for certain types of records. Disposition code. Enter how an agency must dispose of the records after their retention time is met. Agencies may not schedule records for indefinite or permanent retention. Options include routine destruction, archival review, special handling, return to agency, delete, and review by agency and state archives. If you have more questions about this, contact the state archives for more information. Essential records. Enter whether the record series contains essential records which are part of an agency's COOP plan. The only required field in the next section of the ERA system is a retention justification, where you'll need to enter the reasons why the retention time you listed earlier is required. This could include business needs, legal requirements, and regulations. If this field is not filled out or is unclear, you will be contacted for further details, which can delay the process of getting a change to your schedule approved. There are some cases where a record needs to be removed entirely from an agency record schedule. It could be that a program area was moved to another agency, or that an agency no longer uses a certain kind of record for a work process. No matter the case, a record can only be removed from a record schedule if those records are no longer created by the agency and also no longer being stored by the agency. All existing records must either have met their retention or no longer be held by the agency before it can be deleted from their schedule. Similar to before, we'll look at some screenshots from the electronic record action system to see the required fields of information a record coordinator will need to enter as they do this process. You'll need to enter the agency name, SAP code, and bureau that the records are from, and the name of the records coordinator as before. After that, there is only one more section of information needed before a record can be deleted from the schedule. You will enter the current record name, the number of the record, its format, and its retention time as they currently appear on your agency record schedule. And then you'll just need to write a justification of why the record is being removed from your schedule. Typically, this is because the record is no longer created or maintained by the agency. After inventorying records in your agency and making appropriate changes to your agency record schedule, the schedule's information should accurately reflect how records are currently being retained in your agency. Once that has happened, you can create a file plan for each office and bureau in your agency. A file plan is a listing of all records in a work area, office, or bureau. The file plan says what each record's retention is, its location, the person responsible for them, and what to do with them when retention ends. This is a useful guide for office staff when they need to locate records, for onboarding new staff who don't know where everything is, for right-to-know officers when they need to locate something quickly, and to help staff know when records should be gotten rid of when retention ends. It's a lot easier than just handing out a copy of the full agency record schedule to office staff and telling them to figure it out. A file plan is a document that we can make for an individual office, bureau, and division, which only has records specific to their work area, so it's a really customizable document. It's helpful because using a file plan, individual staff don't need to read through entire agency record schedules, they only see the records that they need to know about. A lot of agencies use file plans so that right-to-know record request records can be located quickly, so new hires can locate records and know how long to keep them when they're in their work area, and are used as a quick reference for staff. File plans are not required by Commonwealth Records Management Policy, but we do recommend that you use these as one of the record management tools to help your agency operate efficiently. Here's a blank copy of a file plan on the screen, which is also available on the Pennsylvania State Archives Records Management webpage. You'll see that it has a lot of the same piece of information that we've been talking about in this training with our record inventories and that we needed to enter in the electronic records action system to make changes to our record schedule. These are things like the record name, its location, its format, its retention, and disposal instructions. Each line on this file plan would be for a different type of record that's stored in an office. When it's filled out, office staff will have a one-page guide to all the records that they need to know about. This concludes the new Records Coordinator training, inventorying, record schedule changes, and file plans. Additional training modules are available on the State Archives webpage under the Records Management tab. If you have any questions or concerns, please contact the State Archives Record Services Division. Thank you.